This isn't just a story about cheating. It's about the kind of betrayal that rips your world apart at the seams, the kind that makes you question every memory you've ever cherished. My wife, the woman I'd built a life with, was having an affair. The gut punch discovery was brutal, a classic tale of late-night texts and flimsy excuses. But the real horror wasn't just the lie, it was the identity of her lover. I thought I was losing my mind, spiraling into a vortex of heartbreak and rage. I wanted revenge, the kind that leaves scars, but what I uncovered next changed everything. You think you know how this story ends, think again. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever faced a betrayal that felt like a plot twist? What's your revenge fantasy or your path to healing? Let's share our stories. Part 1, The Symphony of Small Lies. It started with the little things, the discordant notes in the symphony of our 20-year marriage. I'm David, a 48-year-old architect living in a quiet Chicago suburb, a man who believed in blueprints and solid foundations. Our life, I thought, was built to last. My wife, Sarah, was a vibrant art history professor, the kind of woman who could find beauty in a crumbling ruin. Lately, though, the beauty in our own home seemed to be fading, the colors leaching out until we were living in shades of gray. It was the phone, mostly. That sleek little rectangle had become a fortress I couldn't breach. It was always angled away from me, silenced with a swift, almost reflexive motion whenever I entered a room. Sarah, who once left her phone on the kitchen counter for hours, now clutched it like a lifeline. "It's for work," she'd say, her smile just a little too bright. "My students are so needy this semester." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? This was Sarah, the woman who held my hand through my father's funeral, who celebrated my first big commission with cheap champagne on our apartment floor. We had a history, a shared language of inside jokes and knowing glances, or so I thought. Then there were the late-night faculty meetings and the weekend seminars that seemed to pop up with increasing frequency. She'd come home smelling of a perfume I didn't recognize, a musky, almost masculine scent that clung to her hair. When I mentioned it, she'd laugh it off. "Oh, that's probably just from hugging my colleague Maria." You know how she bathes in that stuff. The final piece of the early puzzle was my sister, Chloe, my younger, wilder sister. She and Sarah had always been close, a bond I'd once found endearing. They were confidants, shopping partners, the twin pillars of my family life. Recently, their bond had seemed different, tighter. They shared whispered conversations that would stop the moment I walked in, their laughter dissolving into strained silence. Chloe, a freelance graphic designer who worked from home, was suddenly swamped with projects, her visits becoming less frequent, her calls shorter, more distracted. I'm a man who deals in details, in the subtle stresses and load-bearing points of a structure. I started noticing the hairline cracks in the foundation of my marriage. Sarah's talk of feeling stifled, of wanting more excitement. My own complacency, the comfortable routine of a long-term relationship that I had mistaken for stability. I'd been working long hours, trying to land a contract that would secure our future, a future she was apparently already redesigning without me. I was so focused on the blueprint that I hadn't noticed the demolition crew had already arrived. The oblivious husband, it was a cliché, and I was living it. The irony wasn't lost on me, even then. It was a bitter, dark humor that would soon become my closest companion. Part 2, The Digital Ghost. The discovery wasn't a dramatic, rain-swept confrontation. It was quiet, mundane, and all the more devastating for it. It happened on a Tuesday. Sarah was in the shower and her phone, left for once on our nightstand, buzzed incessantly. A string of messages lit up the screen. I wasn't a snooper. I valued privacy, our privacy. But the sheer volume of them, the insistent rhythm of the buzzing, felt like an alarm bell. My hand trembled as I picked it up. Her passcode was my birthday. The irony was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. The message thread was at the top, under a name I didn't recognize, J. The messages were a tapestry of deceit woven in glowing pixels. J. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about your lips. Sarah, mine either. I felt so alive, he has no idea. J. When can I see you again? I need more of you. Sarah, soon. Chloe is covering for me this weekend. Said we're going to a spa retreat. My sister's name. It was there in black and white, a casual mention that felt like a betrayal in itself. She was their accomplice. The room started to spin. I scrolled up, my thumb moving with a morbid curiosity I couldn't control. Pictures. A hotel room, messy sheets, 2 glasses of wine, and then a photo of them. It was a selfie, slightly out of focus. Sarah, her face flushed with a kind of joy I hadn't seen in years, and Jay. It took my brain a moment to process the image. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. The Jay wasn't a man, it was a woman. And that woman was my sister, Chloe. Her short, dark hair was messy, her familiar smirk plastered on her face as she kissed Sarah's cheek. My wife, my sister, the 2 most important women in my life. A cold, creeping numbness spread through me, starting in my chest and radiating out to my fingertips. The sound of the shower was a distant roar. I felt like I was underwater, the pressure crushing me. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a level of betrayal so profound, so incestuous in its emotional cruelty, that I had no frame of reference for it. It was a psychological horror story, and I was the unwitting main character. I placed the phone back on the nightstand, my movements precise and robotic. I walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and into my study. I closed the door, leaned against it, and slid to the floor. The silence of the house was deafening. I didn't rage, I didn't cry. I just sat there in the dark as the carefully constructed edifice of my life crumbled into dust around me. The ghost in her phone had a face, and it was a face I had loved and trusted my entire life. Part 3, The Architecture of Grief. The days that followed were a masterclass in dissociation. I moved through my life like a specter, a ghost in my own home. I went to work, reviewed blueprints, spoke with clients. I smiled, I nodded, I made small talk, but inside I was a hollowed-out ruin. Every interaction was a performance, every conversation a lie. The nights were the worst. Lying next to Sarah in our bed, the space between us felt like a chasm. Her familiar scent, the warmth of her body, was no longer a comfort, it was a torment. I'd lie awake for hours, replaying those texts, that picture, burning the image of her and Chloe into my memory until it was seared there, a permanent brand of my failure. My mind became a war room. One part of me, the wounded husband, screamed for confrontation. I imagined flipping tables, shouting accusations, demanding answers. I wanted to see the guilt on their faces, to force them to witness the wreckage they had created. But another, colder, more calculating part of me held back. What would confrontation achieve? They would deny it. They would gaslight me, twist the narrative until I was the villain, the paranoid, controlling husband who violated their privacy. Sarah would talk about her unhappiness, her unmet needs. Chloe would play the victim, the misunderstood friend. They would close ranks, and I would be left on the outside, a fool raging against a fortress of their shared lies. I started to see their affair through the lens of my profession. It was a structure built with secrets and deception. It had its own foundation, its own load-bearing walls. To bring it down, I couldn't just charge in with a sledgehammer. I had to be an architect of its destruction. I had to find the weak points, the structural flaws, and exploit them until the whole damned thing came crashing down. This was when the grief began to curdle into something else. Something darker, a cold, hard resolve began to form in the pit of my stomach. Revenge. The word itself felt alien on my tongue, but the desire was primal. It wasn't just about hurting them as they had hurt me. It was about control. They had taken the narrative of my life and rewritten it without my consent. I was going to take it back. I started to remember moments from our past, now tainted by this new reality. A family dinner where Sarah and Chloe shared a lingering look across the table. A weekend camping trip where they had volunteered to share a tent to catch up. All these memories, once so innocent, were now evidence of their long-running conspiracy. The retroactive poisoning of my own history was perhaps the cruelest cut of all. My vulnerability morphed into a quiet strength, a meticulous patience. The everyman was gone. In his place stood a man with a blueprint for retribution. Part 4, The Gaslighter's Gambit. I decided to test the waters. A controlled demolition starts with a small, strategic explosion. Mine came during dinner a week later. I kept it casual, a conversation grenade wrapped in small talk. I spoke to Chloe today, I said, swirling the wine in my glass. Sarah didn't look up from her pasta. Oh, how is she? Still swamped. She sounded tired, I said, watching her carefully. Said she's been pulling a lot of all-nighters. Must be a tough project, a flicker of something in her eyes. Annoyance, fear, it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mask of wifely concern. Poor thing, she works too hard. We should have her over for dinner this weekend, let her relax. The audacity of it, the casual, effortless lie. She was inviting her lover, my sister, into our home for a cozy family meal. The rage was a hot spike in my throat, but I swallowed it down. Maybe, I said. Actually, I was thinking we should go away for the weekend, just the two of us, like that spa retreat you were talking about with Chloe. This time I saw it clearly. Panic. Her fork clattered against her plate. She recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. Oh, David, that's so sweet, but this weekend is impossible. I have that faculty workshop, remember? There was no workshop. I knew because I had subtly checked her university's event calendar earlier that day. Her lie was as flimsy as a house of cards, but she presented it as solid as granite. Right, the workshop, I said, taking a sip of wine. Slipped my mind, this was their strategy, denial and gaslighting. They would make me feel crazy for even suspecting. The next day I got a call from Chloe. Her voice was laced with a saccharine sweetness that made my skin crawl. Hey big brother, Sarah told me you were asking about me. Everything okay? You sound distant lately. Just been busy at work, Chloe, I said, my voice flat. Well, you need to take a break. Sarah and I were thinking of going to that new art exhibit downtown on Saturday. You should come with us. It was a calculated move, a show of normalcy designed to disarm me. They were parading their relationship right in front of my face, confident in my ignorance. They saw me as a prop in their little play, the oblivious husband. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my silence for acceptance, my grief for weakness. That conversation was the turning point. Any lingering thoughts I had of salvaging my marriage, of finding a path to forgiveness, evaporated. Their defiance wasn't a sign of their love for each other, it was a sign of their contempt for me. They weren't just cheating, they were enjoying the thrill of the deception, the power it gave them. My role wasn't just to expose them. It was to dismantle their arrogance piece by painful piece. The game was on. Part 5, The Blueprints of Revenge. My grief had a new, sharp edge, purpose. I was an architect again, but this project wasn't steel and glass. It was about deconstruction. I needed evidence, hard, undeniable proof that would leave them no room to lie or wriggle free. I became a digital archaeologist, excavating the ruins of my marriage. The first step was securing our finances. I met with a financial advisor, a discreet old friend of my father, S., and began the process of separating our assets, moving my own earnings into a private account. It felt cold, clinical, but it was necessary. They had turned our life into a lie. I would protect its tangible truths. Next came the evidence. I installed a keylogger on the home computer. It felt like a gross violation of privacy, but they had obliterated that concept long ago. I bought a small, voice-activated recorder, no bigger than a thumb drive, and left it under the passenger seat of Sarah's car. I was no spy, and my fumbling attempts felt both pathetic and thrilling. There was a dark, ironic buzz to it, the adrenaline of discovery mirroring the illicit thrill they must have felt. The recordings were a revelation. They were sloppy, arrogant in their belief that they were safe. I listened to hours of their conversations, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. They talked about me. He is so clueless, I heard Sarah say one afternoon, her voice dripping with a mix of pity and disdain. He just plods along designing his boring buildings, completely oblivious. It's almost sad. He's a good man, Sarah, Chloe replied, and for a moment a flicker of hope ignited in me. Then it was extinguished. He's just not enough. Not for you, not anymore. You need passion. You need me. They talked about their future, selling the house. Sarah leaving her job, moving to the West Coast where Chloe had contacts. They were building a new life on the rubble of mine. The keylogger on the computer provided the visual proof. Emails, chat logs, travel confirmations for their spa retreat, which was actually a boutique hotel in a neighboring state. They weren't just careless, they were proud. They had an entire folder of photos hidden in a subfolder labeled Art History Project. The pictures were intimate, celebratory, them toasting with champagne, them in bed, wrapped in each other's arms. The same image that had shattered my world on Sarah's phone, now in high-definition clarity. I saved everything to a secure, encrypted hard drive. Each file, each recording, was a brick in the wall I was building around them. My ally in this was unexpected. It was my mother. I didn't tell her everything at first. I just told her that I was worried about Chloe, that she seemed to be pulling away. My mother, with her maternal intuition, had already sensed something was wrong. She and Sarah are attached at the hip, Mom said over the phone one day. It's not natural. Your sister has always been selfish, David. Be careful. My mother was the keeper of our family's history, and she was about to become the star witness at its most explosive chapter. The annual family gathering for my parents' anniversary was in 3 weeks. It was the perfect stage. The entire family would be there, aunts, uncles, cousins, a captive audience for the premiere of my twisted little opera. The blueprints were complete. The stage was being set. Part 6, The Unveiling. My parents' 50th anniversary party was held in the familiar, warm chaos of their sprawling suburban home. The air was thick with the scent of roast beef and my mother's famous apple pie. Laughter echoed through the halls. It was a perfect picture of family, of love, of stability, a perfect lie. Sarah and Chloe arrived together, of course. They moved through the crowd like a single entity, their hands brushing, their smiles perfectly synchronized. They looked radiant, happy. The sight of them, so comfortable in their deception amidst the family they were tearing apart, solidified my resolve. There was no room for doubt, no space for mercy. I waited until after dinner when everyone was gathered in the living room for the toast. My father, a man of few words, gave a touching, simple speech about his love for my mother. Then he turned to me. David, your turn. I stood up, a champagne flute in my hand. The room fell silent. All eyes were on me. I looked at Sarah. I looked at Chloe. Their smiles were plastered on, expectant. 50 years, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. 50 years of love, of trust, of building a life together. That's what we're celebrating today. A foundation of honesty. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. It's a powerful thing, honesty. It's also incredibly fragile. I saw a flicker of unease in Sarah's eyes. Chloe shifted her weight. I've been doing some building of my own lately, I continued, my voice dropping slightly. More of a demolition project, really. See, I discovered that the foundation of my own house was compromised, rotted through with secrets and lies. The mood in the room shifted. The air crackled with tension. My mother was looking at me, her brow furrowed with concern. My father's hand rested on her arm. I have a presentation, I said, pulling a small remote from my pocket. A little tribute to family, to all kinds of family connections. I clicked the remote. The large flat-screen TV on the wall, which had been displaying a slideshow of old family photos, flickered to life. The first image was a screenshot of a text message. Jay, last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about your lips. A collective gasp went through the room. Sarah's face went white. Chloe looked like she was going to be sick. Jay, I said, my voice cold and clear. I was so curious who Jay was. I thought it must be a colleague, a friend. You can imagine my surprise when I found out who it really was. I clicked the remote again. The photo appeared on the screen. Sarah and Chloe in that hotel bed, a selfie of their betrayal blown up for the entire family to see. Screams. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, a strangled sob escaping her lips. My father shot to his feet, his face a mask of thunderous rage. The room erupted into a cacophony of shocked whispers and horrified exclamations. What is this, David? Sarah shrieked, her voice thin and reedy. You spied on me. This is insane. Insane. I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Insane is sleeping with my sister. Insane is planning to sell our house and run away together while lying to my face every single day. Insane is coming here, to our parents' anniversary, and pretending to be a part of this family that you have utterly destroyed. I clicked through the rest of the evidence, the emails planning their trips, the hotel confirmations, the other photos. With each click, another layer of their deception was stripped away. Finally, I played a snippet of the audio recording. Chloe's voice filled the silent room. He's a good man, Sarah, he's just not enough. That was the final blow. My mother turned to Chloe, her face a mixture of heartbreak and disgust. How could you? She whispered, her voice trembling. He's your brother. Chloe burst into tears, a pathetic, gulping sound. Sarah stood frozen, her face a blank mask of shock. The fortress they had built around themselves had crumbled into dust. They were exposed, raw, and utterly alone. I looked at them not with triumph, but with a profound, aching emptiness. I had won. But what exactly was my prize? The ashes of my life. Part 7, The Aftermath and the New Blueprint. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. My parents' party ended in a maelstrom of tears and shouting. My father, a man I had never seen lose his temper, told Chloe to get out of his house and not come back. He looked at Sarah with a quiet, lethal contempt that was far worse than any shouting. The drive home with Sarah was a silent, suffocating ordeal. The air in the car was thick with unspoken words, with the ghosts of 20 years of marriage. When we got to the house, our house, it felt like a foreign country. She tried to talk, to explain. The words tumbled out. She was unhappy. She felt trapped. She didn't know who she was anymore. She and Chloe had reconnected, and it just happened. It was a pathetic, self-serving monologue that I listened to with a detached, clinical calm. "I don't want to hear your excuses, Sarah," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I want you to pack a bag and leave." She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're kicking me out. I am removing a cancer from my home," I replied. "You have until morning." She left. The divorce was brutal but swift. My evidence was irrefutable. I got the house, the majority of our assets. I made sure of it. My revenge wasn't just in the public shaming. It was in the cold, hard logistics of dismantling our shared life. Chloe was cast out. The family, united in their disgust, closed ranks against her. She lost them, she lost her reputation, and she lost Sarah. Their grand love affair, built on the thrill of deception, couldn't survive the harsh light of reality. Within 6 months, I heard through the grapevine that they had split up. The passion that thrived in secret had withered in the open. For a long time, there was no satisfaction. The victory felt hollow. I had exposed the truth, but I was still the man whose wife had left him for his sister. I was still the man who had to rebuild his life from the ground up. I sold the house, our house, because every room held a memory, and every memory was now tainted. I moved into a loft downtown, a space with high ceilings and huge windows that looked out over the city. I threw myself into my work, designing buildings that were bold and new, with no ghosts in their walls. I started therapy. I started running. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to draw a new blueprint, this time for myself. Sometimes I reflect on alternate paths. What if I had confronted her quietly? Could we have salvaged something? The thought feels foreign now. Her and Chloe's defiance, their utter lack of remorse until they were caught, tells me no. What if I had just walked away, without the dramatic confrontation? Perhaps that would have been the healthier path. But the architect in me, the man who needed to see the flawed structure demolished before he could build anew, needed the catharsis of the explosion. It's been 2 years. I don't hate them anymore. I feel a strange, distant pity for them. They are 2 women who blew up their lives for a fantasy and were left with nothing but the rubble. My life is quiet now, but it's my own. I have new friends. I'm dating again, cautiously. My relationship with my parents, strained at first by the sheer trauma of it all, has healed. We are scarred, but we are still a family. I haven't spoken to Chloe since that day. I don't know if I ever will. My revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about surviving them. It was about taking back control of my own narrative. They tried to make me a footnote in their story, but I refused. I became the author of my own. My story doesn't end with betrayal. It ends with resilience. It ends with a new foundation built on the hard-won ground of self-respect. It ends with me looking out over the city from my new home, ready to build again. If this story hit home for you, hit that like and subscribe button for more tales of love, betrayal, and the messy business of being human. Now I have to ask, was I right to expose them like that, or did I go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Forgive or revenge, tag a friend who loves a story with a good, satisfying twist. Check out my next video for a saga about a husband who discovers his wife's secret life on the dark web. Clip your favorite moment of righteous fury from this story and share it. Let's keep the conversation going.